there's a perception that writing funny songs is easy. And it might be easy to make somebody laugh once with a song. But writing a clever song that people can listen to for 30 years is not something that I think is the easiest thing in the world to do. And I just said to him, I don't feel like that right now. Like that's not how I feel. And he goes, well, you're going to alienate all the fans who have grown up on you and expect that from you. And I said, guess what?
I have been an enjoyer of Bowling for Soup for over 2 decades now. And initially I was drawn to them because of the upbeat pop punk delivery of the music and also the whimsical, lighthearted lyrics that went with it. But over the years, listening to the catalog of music, I've learned to appreciate the songwriting and the details that goes into those songs, especially on the recordings, that make it the music that it is. So I'm so excited to have the chance to talk today to vocalist and guitarist Jaret Reddick from Bowling for Soup. Welcome. Thank you very much for your time. Now, you're about to tour the UK in celebration of 20 years of A Hangover You Don't Deserve. Now, when most bands do let's do a full album thing from many, many years ago, they probably have to spend a lot of time going, how in the hell do we relearn these songs and play them live? But this album is packed with hits that you play over the years. Did you feel like you could kind of do this tomorrow if you needed to at any point, or did you need to do a bit of prep in some of those songs?
No, it was 18 songs. And so I think we played 6 of them. Thank you. My wife brought me a coffee because she loves me.
Oh, very nice.
I think, I think 6 of them were sort of standard, and I think we had played like 9. So there's about half the record that we didn't have to worry about,
Okay.
But the rest of it, it was exactly as you ask, like, oh my God, like we're going to have to go. I mean, we have not played these songs since we recorded the album. There's a few of them that I had played acoustic or whatever, but I mean, once or twice, and where I'd write out the chords and play it on a online show or something. So yeah, I was actually, I'm going to be honest, I don't really get nervous. I was a little nervous about it. I really was. I was just like, man, plus we set a pretty high standard for how we sound live. We're people tell us that we sound like the album, a little faster, but they're like, oh my God, like the vocals are the same. Like it's, and I didn't want to lose that, but you know what? It came together, just like everything always does. It's funny for us, we don't really like to rehearse. And, when we get in there, we sort of just get everything, we do everything a couple of times, and then it's like, all right, now it's up to you.
Okay.
And so, the first time hitting the stage with those songs, to be fair, I didn't know what was going to happen.
Wow.
I mean, we had probably played them as a band 3 or 4 times maybe. And so, but it always just kind of happens, it always just kind of comes together. And so you mentioned the songwriting. It's one of the things that I miss that technology has sort of taken away from, the writing of the songs process. Cause it's so easy for me to just do my demos in here in my studio. And like when I'm done writing a song, like my wife will come in at the end of the day, and that if I've written a song, and I can literally play it for her, and it sounds like a band is playing it, and because I'm demoing it when I'm writing it. Well, back in the day, I would have to show the guys at rehearsal, and we would work on it during sound check, and then I'd just be like, screw it, we're going to play it live, and you throw yourself to the dogs, and then all of a sudden, it sort of just takes shape. So I do miss that sort of, throwing caution to the wind kind of thing. But yeah, it came together really well. And quite frankly, I'm really proud of the way that the songs came together and how everything sounds.
That's great. I saw a clip of you on one of your earlier gigs doing this, I'm assuming in the States, where you mentioned that you'd front loaded the album with what you described as maybe like hit songs because of the way iTunes set up 30-second previews of like the first 3 songs. Is that actually the case of how you structured the album?
I was doing kind of a bit there. I was doing a bit, but the thing is that the reason albums were front loaded was iTunes, yes, but also listening stations when CDs were a big thing, they had listening stations. And so people would walk up to the CD thing and you would want your first three songs to be your strongest songs. And then, your ballad is third or fourth. And then it sort of just goes from there. And, but that really was the thinking in iTunes as well, was that, it only gave you a preview of, at first, I think it was 30 seconds. And then it started giving you like a minute. And then the next phase was like, okay, now we'll give everybody a minute of each song, but for many years, many meaning 2 or 3, because it all happened so fast, that everybody got 30 seconds to a minute of each song. So yeah, you wanted not necessarily the best songs, but you wanted the singles to be up there because those are the songs that people were familiar with.
Yeah.
So you wanted them to be, oh, okay, this is that band, but yeah, I mean, it's funny the bounce back I got for that. Most people were like, well, that's true, but that was more of that's an interesting guy that posted that. He's a fan and he's awesome, but his fans are all rock fans. And so they were like, that's why the industry fell apart, because you guys are putting bullshit on the rest of the album, and it was like, that you're just missing the bit, the whole bit is that the context of that bit live is that, like, hey, we're about to play 1985 third. Okay. Like, that's
we're gonna
unheard of.
Yeah, no, it's great. I love the idea of playing with that. I remember having my mind blown a couple of years ago when I went to see Papa Roach, and they opened with Last Resort, and you were like, wait a minute, how do you open with like the biggest song? But what it meant was that for the rest of the gig, you're going, okay, now we've had that moment. I'm in. What have you got for us? And it was kind of fun.
Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of bands that in the 90s, a lot of bands used to do that. They would open with their radio hit. And I've definitely never known Papa Roach to do that. But, I think it's almost one of those things where, you're like, I dare you, I dare you to do it, and they're just like, oh, you think this is all we got, huh? Well, guess what? We're going to play this and we're going to make you stay. And there's something to be said for that. I'm, as I said, Hangover You Don't Deserve is 18 songs. With people still paying attention when we get to like Next Ex-Girlfriend, Last Call Casualty, and the later songs on there, and I can take out my in-ear monitor and hear them singing along on the parts where I would hope that I hope and pray every night that they do, right? That is the best feeling. I've always said the best feeling in the world is seeing mouths move to songs that I sit around and write in my underwear, but quite frankly, the best feeling in the world is the sound of the voices singing something back to you that you made up. I just gave myself chills, but singing something back to you that you made up, and what that means is that means something to them. Like there's some sort of a feeling that they have about that. They have a relationship with those words that you put together, with that sound that you put together with those words, and it's just such a magical thing. I always say the best feeling in life is hitting a parlay hard 8 on a craps table. But second place for sure is that hearing the audience sing back for sure.
Yes, because in order for them to do that, they will have to have in some way connected with the lyrics so that it stays in their mind. And especially if that's happening on deeper cuts, that kind of showcases it. Are there a couple of songs later on in that album that when you're playing them live have surprised you as going like, actually, yeah, this moment stands out in particular that you didn't expect?
So this is somewhat related to the question you're asking, but I think this is a good answer to your question. The song Next Ex-Girlfriend, I hated that song. In fact, I was just like, man, can't we just skip this? I jokingly.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Can we just skip this? It's just not my favorite song. And we started playing that and just watching the audience's reaction, hearing them singing along to it, and then just realizing like, oh my God, this song is so fun to play. There's a reason I did this. I did this same sort of run on 2 songs on the record. And it's because it's the other thing about going back is that I see where I was in my writing at the time, and also my guitar playing, because I'm an uneducated guitar player. I taught myself to play guitar a couple years before I started Bowling for Soup, and literally just to write songs. And so I'm completely self-taught. So as as the years and 30 years in, I'm pretty good now, but like, I wasn't always, and so 20 years ago I was still developing, and you could tell that I was starting to like learn stuff. Anyway, so Next Ex-Girlfriend is fun to play and the audience loves it. And I had this great relationship with that song now. I love it. I think it's great, and there's a couple of lyrics that we change, because it's 2025, but and I apologize for my voice. I know this is radio and video,
Oh,
but
you're Grant.
yeah, I got a chest cold when I was in Australia, and it's just sort of lingered and lingered and lingered, but I can still sing, so that's
Great.
the main thing.
No worries. Yeah, that's the key part. I saw you mentioned in an interview about this record that it was the first time you've done a lot of co-writing on the songs in that. I was wondering if that's what led to so much addition of piano in particular in this record. Was that from that process? There's quite a lot of piano. Even the very start when it almost kicks in at the very beginning, there's a guitar lick, but there's also a piano at the same time, which I would imagine without that, you would just go, oh, the guitar lick is enough, and then we'll go into what we normally do.
No, it wasn't because of the co-writes. It was because of Butch Walker. It was because when we did Drunk Enough to Dance with Butch, it's the first time that we had really put anything on these songs besides drums, guitars, bass, vocals, and percussion. We had really never done these pads of B3 or these pianos or this percussiveness or whatever. Like I'd done some stuff where I'd put like acoustic guitar behind an electric guitar, which I stole from Green Day, from the Warning record, and but no, it was Butch sort of showing us that like all of this underlying stuff, and that man, once I learned that, you could tell I sort of got out of control with it on Hangover. I was just like, let's put some piano on this, let's put this on there, and since then, it's on everything. It's just less on everything. It sort of becomes, but if you get through like Sorry for Partying, there's still quite a bit of keyboards and stuff, so underlying stuff for that. But yeah, no, all of that I learned from making a record with Butch Walker, and just learned what some of that stuff underneath adds to things. Like I said, it's crazy how many songs have that you don't know that you're hearing.
Yes.
And
unless you're actively listening for it. Like I already just noticed there's something that sounds like like bells or like a xylophone key after the first chorus. Like it gives it a brightness that you might not notice if you're not paying active attention.
Yeah, and that's just a glockenspiel is all that is. It's just like kids used to play. Just the little bell kit, and there's tons of that stuff. And that's again what's crazy about where we are technology wise now, because I do all of that with this little piano behind me. And, you don't even have to have the real thing. I own a glockenspiel, but it's in my son's closet because there's not really any real reason for me to ever get it out, because I can do it and I can manipulate the sounds where you would never be able to tell that it was fake. And, but yeah, man, that's a great question, by the way. I love questions about production and the writing, and I certainly, I owe Butch so much. I learned so much just in that month that we were there with him. And then we did 4 of the songs, and Almost is one of them. I wrote Trucker Hat, Almost, and Last Call Casualty that are on this record with him. And he produced those 3, and then he produced 1985 as well. And so, and then we just stayed in his studio, and myself and Rusty Cobb produced the rest of the record. And then again, then we went on to the Great Burrito Extortion case, and it was the same team, and still just adding all that stuff back there behind. But yeah, there's hidden gems. It pretty much starts on the Drunk Enough to Dance record. If you really, really listen in headphones or on good speakers, and you just sort of try to pay attention to what's going on back behind all the music, you'll hear quite a few Easter eggs back there.
Yeah, there'll be things like hand claps or tambourines maybe from earlier on. Like, oh yeah, that adds a little something.
Yeah,
percussively.
Right. I mean, I really like how I don't really do it anymore, and I don't really know why, but I always really, really liked how pop punk guitar, like heavy guitar, sounds with an acoustic guitar behind it. and we've changed our tone a little bit over the years, and maybe that's it. Maybe I just don't, my ears don't feel like they need it anymore, or maybe it's just, I am enjoying the drier sound. We're doing a lot less of that stuff. Like our stuff is kind of, uh, if you listen to like Pop Drunk Snot Bread, it's sort of back to basics as far as like there's more guitar out in your face than it is any of that real underlying stuff. But yeah, it's you know, that comes from making records is so much fun when you're all there and you're doing it, and that's probably another part of it too. Sorry to ramble, but
No, dude.
another part of some of that stuff going away is that, you know, the way that records are made now is that, you know, I send the song to Gary and he goes into a place and does his drums. And then I send it to Rob and he does his bass and puts some other stuff on there. And then it comes here and then I sing it. Then I send it back to Rob. And, you know,
Yeah.
then we send it to our producer Linus, who adds a few things here and there, and then it's done, you know. Whereas if you're in the studio for a month and you've been drinking all day, you're like, let's put a piano on almost.
There's a glockenspiel in the corner. Should we use that?
Let's just put that in here, you know, because you've listened to it for the sixth time that day and you're like, something's missing, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, those records were so fun to make. And that was a huge part of it.
Nice. And then lyrically, one thing I've noticed is kind of thematic, I think, for yourselves over the years is you can take an object and write a song about it as if it were a romantic relationship. I was thinking of like Trucker Hat has a bit of that. There's Hooray for Beer. There's that sort of like rug pull in that one. And My Weena, an absolute gold version
Yeah.
of that. Are those things that you regularly think of these comparisons, or are you trying to think of what can I write that's a unique take on something that links in that way?
Yeah. It's mostly what can I write that has a unique take on that. All three of those are completely different stories. You know, it's like, Hooray for Beer is actually one of the first songs that I wrote with Linus, who is he's our producer and he's, you know, my best friend and my pretty much one of the only guys that I write with regularly anymore. Um, and, we literally had just, you know, we had been out drinking the night before. We were like, we should write a love song to beer, you know, that song is so clever because, you know, it really does sort of like talk about all the things that beer does to you and that you do
Mm.
with it. You know, I love that lyrics to that song so much. And then Trucker Hat, you know, was this song where Ashton Kutcher was just really, really big at the time, you know,
Oh yeah.
that show, Punked, and, you just couldn't get away from the guy. And he always had that trucker hat on. And, Butch and I were just talking about that, about how, like, you know, God, he loves that trucker hat, you know, and, and that just sort of stemmed this love song, you know, about, it reminds me of the trucker hat that I used to wear, not to block out the sun, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because
No.
I'm
Style
wearing it for
choice.
fashion,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I thought, I mean, My Weena, I've enjoyed that. I've listened to that song dozens of times, but I was listening to it on my way to work today, and I giggled out loud by myself on separate occasions during it. It's so well crafted, just so brilliant. I
Thank you.
think the wordplay in that is fantastic. Um,
Yeah, that again. That's a Linus and Jaret song as well, and you know, we both sort of pride ourselves on being the funniest guy in the room, and sometimes kind of compete for that. And which, you know, it's the same sort of relationship I had with Butch actually in the writing area, because Girl the Bad Guys Want, we had each other. You know, we sort of wrote that while we were recording it. And Linus and I do this a lot too. And sometimes it's just trying to make the other guy laugh. And you come up with these lines, you know, like, all I got's a moped and, you know, racetrack season pass. Does a mullet make a man? You know, when I remember when that line was written, you know, Butch couldn't breathe. And, and so the same is true a lot of times when I'm writing with Linus. You know, it's like, okay, we need a second verse for this. And I'm already in the booth and we're just spitting stuff back and forth. You know, that's, you know, I think one of the things it's fun, you're asking, you know, I love that you're asking me about some of the cleverness of all this. And I think that's sort of what is important, is that I think there's a perception that writing funny songs is easy.
Hmm.
And it might be easy to make somebody laugh once with a song, but writing a clever song that people can listen to for 30 years is not something that I think is the easiest thing in the world to do. I think a lot of people will be like, dude, I got this idea for a song called My Neighbor's a Porn Star, and it's just like, all right, I mean, that has zero longevity. You know what I mean? Like, and no offense, but like, I think it's something that we really I pride myself on being able to write songs that make people laugh, giggle, and songs where you like don't think about lines all the time. And then, like you said, you've been listening to us for years, and all of a sudden you're listening to My Weena today, probably for the 150th time, and lines are sticking out to you, right? Sticking
Yes.
out to you.
Hey, there's another one. Yeah, no, it's great. You're dead right, and it's become something that I'm sure the majority of Bowling for Soup fans will come to love from yourself, especially if they see you live as well. The humor is throughout it. I was lucky enough to see your set at Download Festival last year on the main stage there, and like the onstage banter is half of the joy of the whole thing.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's our fans say it all the time, like, we come for the music, we stay for the jokes, or vice versa. But a lot of fans will say that the banter is their favorite part. And it's why people will come to 5 or 6 or 7 shows on a tour sometimes. It's because
mm,
not every night is completely different, and you get a few little recycled bits here and there that are important to the transitions or whatever from song to song or during a song. But then I'll just start leaving those out and throw the guy. So, again, we're up there sort of entertaining one another as well. And I think that is why it doesn't really get old for the audience. I think if it were something where we were rehearsed or whatever, it might not have that same impact.
yeah.
But yeah, that's what keeps it interesting for me. And you'll always have one guy going, play a song or play some music, and it's like, my stereo, my go to line is, if you came to see us to hear songs, you've come to see the wrong band.
Yeah. One thing that's cool, I think about is that Download Festival you've played that a few times over the years, and it has historically been much more of like a gatekeeping sort of metal only thing. But Bowling for Soup has played at a time where nowadays you can see pop punk on the menu, as it were, and be like, oh yeah, totally, this fits
Yeah,
in.
right.
What do you think is the reason behind why Bowling for Soup was able to play that kind of festival years ago and be kind of accepted and people enjoy it for what it is?
There is something about our band, and it's not just the UK. I mean, we've done metal fests in Germany, and Japan, and a lot of rock fests here in the States. But I don't know. There's an acceptance of us with not only just the metal community of fans, but the bands as well. And maybe it's just because we're real. I mean, we're not up there. We're not trying to be something we're not. We don't. Um, it's we're just dudes that started a band and are up there having fun. But I think um, the way that the promoter for Download explained it to me one day was, he used to put us in the middle of the afternoon on Sundays because everybody had had such a long weekend and they needed a breath of fresh air. And
Right.
I was just like, it's the perfect description because, you're so right. I mean, in the early days, I think it's '07 maybe. I'm trying to think. That's probably wrong, but I think the band before us was Godhead, and the band after us was Anthrax. Or it was just, it's wild. And you're looking over, and there's Dee Snider from Twisted Sister just singing every word, and what is happening in my life
That's
right now?
awesome.
Um, so yeah, that acceptance, it's definitely not lost on me. I definitely have always appreciated that. And if you think back to part of the reason that Steel Panther brought us out on their arena tour that they did over there a few years ago, it was us, it was Buck Cherry, us, and Steel Panther. And a big reason that Steel Panther asked us to do it was because of the response that we get at those big rock festivals. They just knew that it would work.
Yeah, and it's not wildly dissimilar from their thing as well.
Yeah,
They rock. They play fucking. They have great songs, but
yeah,
also there's humor. There's lightheartedness to it. Like it's kind of you don't have to just be a
sure.
moody rock band to make things work.
Well, Steel Panther is yes, I think they go hand in hand. Their thing is though is that everything is overtly funny. My songs are there are obviously overtly funny songs, but for the most part, it's just things where you just go, "What did he say?" Because I'm actually writing love songs, but
Mm,
the reason they started being funny was because I didn't want to put my heart out in the world, So I was just like,
right.
"Oh, if I make a joke, nobody will think I'm talking about me," and so that's sort of where the whole thing started. But yeah, I think we're a definite good combination. It'd be interesting to see what that would do now that we're doing arenas over there. What about maybe we return the favor and they would come join us sometime.
Yeah, yeah. I've only just thought out because even in the song "Me with No You," which is a somber, genuine song, even in that there's a lyrical moment like on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a C, and I was like,
Yeah,
oh, that's a lovely touch. So
yeah,
is it kind of a almost like I can't be too earnest. I need
hmm
to
yeah,
send it up a little.
exactly. It's I've gotten better about it, about being able to put myself out there. Turbulence, When We Die, things like that. But there's definitely it took me a while to get comfortable with that. To get to that point of I don't need to throw in something silly to break it up. You know, but I also think that's what makes it Bowling for Soup. Like you sort of need those moments in those songs. I think they're all the songs that I just mentioned before are great and they're very accepted. But you know, I will admit, and two of them were singles. When We Die and Turbulence were both singles for us. Uh, there's a bit of a nervousness. If I don't know if that's the right word, a little sort of feeling like I'm just sort of dipping my toe in the water to see what that fan reaction is going to be. I know that the hardcore fans are going to love it because I know they know that it really does come from the heart and that these are real emotions and real songs. But what about the guy that only knows Almost and Girl the Bad Guys Want in 1985? He's like, what? I was just so afraid it was going to be like, the hell is this? Um, and it was the opposite. Both of those songs were very very well received and did and continue to do really well for us in streaming and stuff. And so that's one of those moments where you can go, ah, you know, like
Yeah.
they get it.
Yeah, the reality is that life isn't just jokes, and it isn't just sincere, meaningful stuff as well. There's the whole spectrum, and you're able to express that in a variety of ways in your music, and that's what
Yeah.
makes it, I think, so authentic as well.
Yeah, then that's the big story with Bowling for Soup is Lunch Drunk Love. I was going through a pretty rough time. I was all in the area of that time. I was breaking my band up, and I was getting a divorce and fighting for custody of my kids and moving to a different city. And I was in a new relationship and experiencing anxiety and depression for the first time. And there's just a lot happening in my life when that record was being made. And so when Lunch Drunk Love was recorded and presented to our managers, he just goes, "Man, it seems dark. There's no My Weena,
Hmm.
and where's the My Weena? Where are all the laughs?" And I just said to him, "I don't feel like that right now. Like that's not how I feel." And he goes, "Well, you're going to alienate all the fans who have grown up on you and expect that from you." And I said, "Guess what? All of those same people are grown up and they all have these same feelings I do at one point in their lives. And they're going to be able to relate to this record probably more than any record we've ever done as a work, as a whole thing." And two things about this story. 2 weeks later, he was on a family vacation and had listened to the record and he called me. My manager does not apologize. He does not apologize. He is very much like he says what he says or whatever, and this is what and he's very he apologized. "You're right. This is a fucking great album. It is a great, great album. And it is a big fan favorite. Like most people will say Drunk Enough to Dance is their favorite album. There is a very large population that probably as many people that will say Hangover will say Lunch Drunk Love."
Well, that's great. And I think for fans of your music, the reason they were fans in the first place is probably because you were expressing what you genuinely came from you. If you start trying to write things for what the fans want, you're going to be writing from the perspective of some other person that isn't you necessarily, and they'll come and go, and that's fine, you know.
Man, you're so right. It's like the the best way to explain what you just said is, you know, is like when the internet really started to really kick in, 2009, 2010, where the word viral video became a thing. And I remember the label going, "You guys just need to do a viral video. You need to get like a viral video going or whatever." And then and it's like it's the same, it's the exact same thing as us coming to us and going, "You got to write a hit. You need to write a hit." And you know, and one guy in the music industry once said to me, he said, "Hits don't grow on trees." And I was like, as simple as that quote is, it's so true. Like I just don't think many people, I know it's happened, but I don't think many people go, "I'm going to write a hit right now," and just write a hit. Like there's so many other aspects to it, and, um, that's just, that's just that whole thing. Right. And now we're all chasing it with videos too. Right. It's just like, why isn't this one going viral? And then this whole fucking viral video thing, Steve, it drives me bonkers because I will spend hours on one and just and 1,000 people which that's awesome. Thank you to those people that watch it. But then I record myself in an arcade taking a drink of beer with 1985 in the background and 11 million people watch it. And I'm like, what is happening? Like you can't, so you're right. I think it's the genuineness of it all, right? It's people can tell. And I say that to bands all the time that ask me for advice. I'm just like, man, be you, be real. People can sense bullshit. They just can. Like
Yep.
we know all of those videos that are out there with husbands and wives that are doing skits. They're not real. Maybe they're
Yes.
still funny. But like if you're trying to sell that as a bag of goods to somebody to be like, "Hey, this is something that you could hold true to your heart and keep forever," that's not going to cut it. That just doesn't, that's not how it works. And so I feel the same way about songs. I feel like there has to be some sort of genuineness to them, even if they're silly. Like I want to be Brad Pitt, like I do actually want to be Brad Pitt.
Oh, that's a great song, by the way. So good. Another one that I chortled when I first heard it. But yeah, another key important factor of this is maybe how we'll round things out here, is that Bowling for Soup's been going for like 30 years.
Yeah, 30
And
years.
I think people would struggle to do that if they weren't doing something that's authentically feeling like it's their identity and who they are and expressing themselves meaningfully, because that's something that should be more sustainable than putting on a pretense and trying to write from a point of view that you don't necessarily relate to. That'd be hard to sustain.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so many factors that are hard to, I mean, there's bands that I'm surprised that are still around just because of their relationship internally. But, it's a big part of our existence is our relationships internally, our relationship with the fans, the fact that our fans, um, feel like they know us because we're just genuine guys. Like I'm not really any different, on stage as I am sitting here talking to you right now. It's later in the day and I've had a few beers and there's, thousands of people paying attention to me. So I'm like, wee, hey, I'm, whatever. But, you know, and I think people know that, and then you have to also sort of look at the body of work that you've created as well. And, I am equally as proud of every single album we've ever put out there, 100%. There's a few of them that I would say, no, I mean, I think they're all great. Yeah. I like them all.
That is a wonderful position to be in. I mean,
Yeah.
that's anyone could dream of. That's if you could paint a picture of what your ideal success would look like, it's got to be something like in
Yeah.
that phrase
Where
there.
I'm not really, like the only song that I hate that we ever did was the cover of I Ran when we re-released Drunk Enough to Dance. And the only reason I hate it was because of the reason we did it was like the head of the label was like, hey, this song's on this really popular video game right now. We need to do a cover of it. So we're going to send you back in the studio, go write a couple of songs, and then we're going to re-put out this album. And I just, all of it was so fucking gross to me. So I hate that because I know a lot of people really love that cover. But like to me, it just such a shitty reason that we did it, that that's literally the only song I think that I can't stand that we did.
And it sounds like it's because it didn't come from an authentic place. You decided yourselves, wouldn't it be cool? We'd love to make this
Yeah,
song.
exactly. You're exactly right. Essentially he was saying, let's make a viral video.
Yeah.
Let's make a hit. And it's like, again, I think that that's possible. It's certainly not impossible, but that's not what I want to do. I don't want to do that. And I've, you know what? I've stayed true to, that's one of the very few times where I haven't stayed true to, myself and what it is I want to do and how I want to steer this band. There's very few of those things. That's the only thing I think musically that I can say that I did where I just felt like it didn't feel good. It felt gross. There's a couple of other things that I did for reasons of just pressure beyond, but I learned from that. And if I don't feel like something is right for Bowling for Soup, at this point, 30 years in, then I just say no. And I've been able to do that now for more than the most of these 30 years that we've been together. And you're right. I am very proud of that.
That's fantastic. What a wonderful place to be. And a lovely mindset as well to have as you're celebrating 20 years of a Hangover You Don't Deserve on the tour this year. So Thank you very much for your time. I've really enjoyed getting some more details on some of the songs I've enjoyed here. And good luck with the rest of the tour and the future music, no doubt, you come out with at some point as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me. Again, everybody, I'm so sorry about my voice, but it'll be back by February. And again, I can sing. That's the main thing. Just shut up.
You're great. I've seen Bowling for Soup play a gig in London where you had like a cold or something, and it still sounded great. So yeah, it's all good.
I appreciate that, my friend.
Well, that was a real treat to have that chat with Jaret Reddick from Bowling for Soup. If you enjoyed that conversation, make sure you subscribe to this podcast via YouTube or whatever podcast platform you're enjoying this from so you can hear more interviews with rock musicians like him in future. I'll make sure as well to add some links in the description of this episode to their social media accounts, etc., so you can find out about upcoming tours or music releases from them. There's also a link to the Discord server of mine, so you can chat to me about music afterwards as well. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully see you in another episode very soon.